Hello, my name is Leslie Dominguez, and today I will be presenting my presentation discussing period tracking apps and whether they're even effective for what they advertise that they're helping. So I want to go into a little bit more detail on what are period tracking apps and what are their intended uses. For those who are unfamiliar, most women's periods are a very stressful time, especially if they have irregular periods or they experience more symptoms during their periods. Whenever a woman is like planning for a baby or just planning around their period apps can be useful. With period apps, users are able to log their cycle and their symptoms, as well as their behaviors. The information that the user logs into the apps will help generate predictions on their fertility window, next period, and PMS symptoms. Now, with Roe versus Wade being overturned, I believe it's very important to discuss period tracking and whether people should even use these type of apps. When Roe versus Wade was overturned in June 2022, Americans lost their constitutional right to an abortion. Throughout the nation, states implemented trigger bans that instantly outlawed abortions. In these states, people who sought or performed abortions face criminal punishment. With this happening, women should be more cautious with using these apps due to all the information the app has about a user's menstrual cycle and sex life. In these apps, users are able to not only record their menstrual cycle, but also their sexual activity and track their birth control. This feature helps prevent pregnancy, but it can also be dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands. Now I want to talk about the specific uses of period apps and how can smartphone applications aid in our health. There is no denying that period tracking apps can be beneficial to users. However, there is no denying that using these apps can pose a risk to users. Some benefits of using a period tracking app include a better idea of one's menstrual cycle due to the app's ability to predict one's cycle, a better idea of one's typical PMS symptoms, the ability to log one's birth control, and the ability to discover a correlation between period symptoms. Some risk of using period tracking apps fall mostly into privacy risk. In the past, period tracking apps were discovered to sell private data to third parties. In one instance, the Wall Street Journal found out that the popular period tracking app Flow was selling users' data. They reached a settlement with the Federal Trade Commission after the FTC alleged it shared sensitive users' data to the third parties, including Facebook and Google. Now, this is dangerous considering this type of data could fall into the wrong hands. One could be prosecuted for being speculated to even have an abortion just because they missed their period or they forgot to log it for that month. That missed period could lead others to believe the user received an abortion even if it wasn't the case. Now, throughout researching this topic, I wanted to also look into what were the specific benefits of using a period tracking app, and one of the studies that I ended up finding was smartphone application for period tracking, rating and behavioral change among women users, and this was researched by these authors listed above. For this study, I can admit that I wasn't surprised by the results of it. In this specific study, they looked to see how period apps help. And throughout the study, they ended up finding that these period tracking apps helped women in many different aspects. One of them was they helped set the user on track. So most of the apps examined helped the user set goals, motivation, and earn their activity due to the fact that it does ask you in these questions, how was your mood today? Um, did you exercise today? And it asks questions such as that. Another benefit that they found with using these period tracking apps was that the user was able to get a better idea of how their menstrual cycle was and what symptoms might arise during these times. So they also became aware of their behavior change. As known, periods can end up bringing up PMS symptoms, and most of these PMS symptoms are usually connected to mood changes. And with these behavior changes, they were able to acknowledge it through the period tracking apps. And finally, the most obvious benefit of using this app was due to its ability to track periods. For most users, the apps were able to track their periods, but the apps were also an effective method of planning or preventing pregnancy. Another study that I ended up finding was titled The Effect of Symptom Tracking Apps on Symptom Reporting, and they were researched by the researchers listed above. I ended up finding this study super interesting, specifically due to the fact that the researchers were looking to see whether the use of period tracking apps were even helping to report symptoms and recognize these symptoms, or if anything, they were making the symptoms worse. And during this experiment, they ended up pulling a sample of 91 women that experienced regular periods from the ages of 18 to 35, and they studied them for 1 to 4 month periods where they were looking to see if these women experienced the 12 most common menstrual symptoms, and if they ended up finding that they experienced it more during this period. They had a group that specifically used period tracking apps, and with this group, they ended up finding that they did indeed experience the period symptoms more, which is really odd, but they had the idea that the participants ended up experiencing their symptoms more due to the symptom perception theory. And in this theory, it ends up saying that if you are actively acknowledging a symptom or looking for specific symptoms, you're more likely to experience it since you are looking to see if you are dealing with it at the time. And I definitely found this interesting, especially since the findings were similar to previous studies that the researchers cited. And here are my references for all my information regarding my presentation.